Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is heed. Let's take a moment to look at some of the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The first way you are likely to hear heed used is to mean to pay attention to someone or something. A second and very much related or connected way this verb gets used is to mean to take notice of someone or something. Many times when you hear this verb, heed, it's going to be followed with a word like a warning or advice. So, someone many times is asking others to pay attention to or take notice of some piece of information. You should know that heed is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, all I'm going to do is add ing to form heeding. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by adding ed. Our base verb, heed, ends in a voiced d sound. So our past tense ending is going to make an id sound, and we're going to add an extra syllable as we say it. It should sound like this: heated, heated. Okay? Now, there aren't any additional phrasal verbs that we need to study today, so let's focus our time on practicing our verb of the day in a couple different verb tenses. First, let's talk about the imperative. You might also hear these sentences called commands. So they're rather unique in English because there is no stated subject. The subject is always implied and it's you, either singular or plural. So this depends on if you are writing or speaking to one or more people. Okay? In the affirmative, to make an imperative sentence, what I can do is just start my sentence with the base verb. So I'm not adding any additional endings or suffixes to the verb. Okay, let's take a look at an example sentence. Heed this warning. Do not drive on the roads for the next 6 hours. The conditions are hazardous. Okay. I live in the Midwestern parts of the United States, and this is something we'll hear over the course of each winter. So there will be periods of time where there are really bad winter storms. And if you don't have to be driving somewhere, many times you shouldn't be. You should be waiting for the roads to be cleared, for the conditions to improve. So you might hear someone on the radio, someone on television say, they're really asking you kind of pay attention, follow this particular advice. Okay? Now, you can also make a negative imperative sentence where you're telling someone not to do something. Okay? To do that, what you'll do is start with do not and then the base verb. Okay? You might also hear people use the contraction don't. That's in my example sentence here. Don't heed the rumors. Okay? So, someone might say this if they do not want people to pay attention to gossip that might be going around. The last thing I want to share about the imperatives is that sometimes it can feel a bit uncomfortable to tell someone else to do a particular action. So in both the affirmative or the negative, you can add the word please either to the beginning of the sentence or the end, but not in both places, just one. And that can soften it, make it a bit more polite. Okay? You're going to notice from the dark black box on my screen, there are no questions in the imperative. So we're just telling people to do a particular action or not do a particular action. Now let's talk about the simple future. Today we're going to focus on making sentences with will. This is really common with promises and predictions. Some people might also use it to make an offer. And the nice thing about this form of the simple future is that our structure is going to be the same no matter what our subject is. So we're going to have our subject, we're going to have will, it's our modal, and then we're going to have the base verb. It's always that structure for will in the simple future. Here's an example of that. I will heed your guidance. So Here, someone is saying, I'm going to pay attention, I'm going to follow your advice. Okay? If you want to make a negative sentence in the simple future, your structure is going to be to start with your subject, then will not, and then the base verb. You might also hear people use the contraction won't and then the base verb. You can see that in my example sentence here. Many people won't heed the latest warning from the health department to resume masking. So I read stories this week that it is now recommended by many departments of health, and I think even our Center for Disease Control, the CDC here in the United States, for about 10% of our country now to start wearing masks again when they're in public. So even though this advice is being given, it's being shared in many different ways, there are many people who are not going to pay attention to it for many different reasons. Finally, let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple future. To do this, we start with will, then we have our subject, and then the base verb. Here's an example question. Will Congress heed hospitals' calls for more financial assistance in the aftermath of the pandemic? Saw a sentence similar to this that was being used in a newspaper article. So it was talking about various healthcare systems, various lobbyists saying many hospitals still need more support to recover from all of their expenses and lost income that occurred during the pandemic. So here we're kind of wondering, is Congress going to pay attention to this in the future? Now, let's spend a moment looking at some words related to our verb heed. And the first word we're going to look at is the noun form of this word. So you'll notice it has the exact same spelling and the exact same pronunciation. When heed gets used as a noun, it generally means careful attention. And I'm going to tell you it's very common to see no before this noun. So you can see it in my example here. The students paid no heed to the substitute, right? So here it just means they're not paying attention. Maybe they're not listening at all to the substitute teacher that's in their class that particular day. Another related word you might encounter is the adjective heedful. This can mean aware of or attentive to someone or something. An example of this might be, we should be heedful of inflation as we make next year's budget. You might hear sentences similar to this as various companies and organizations make financial plans for 2023. So what they're encouraging here is let's be aware, let's think about how inflation is going to impact our income and our expenses. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.